I replied no problem after my bank alert and her privacy with him text. So I filed for divorce, took screenshots, saved the card alerts, pulled the smart garage log, sent the lobby clip to hospital compliance. And she was placed on leave while the house sold, and I stayed gone. The bank alert buzzed on my phone while I was standing in the fastener aisle of the hardware store. It said a room charge was pending on our joint card, a small inn on the river edge. The time stamp was now. I stood there with a box of screws in my hand and felt the store lights blur. The cart rattled as someone passed, and the smell of cut wood mixed with oil. I hadn't booked any room. I was 40, and my life usually fit into clean lines. I worked as a rail signal technician outside Ely, Minnesota. I checked track sensors, reset switches, and made sure the lights told trains where to go. Our split-level house sat on a quiet road with a red mailbox, a row of muddy boots by the back door, and the sweet smell of apple tea most nights. Lisette and I had been married 8 years. We kept a rhythm. My phone chimed again, and this time it was her text. "Don't come home tonight. I'm having a friend over and need privacy with him." There was a smiley face at the end, like a bandage on a cut. I stared at that line until my eyes hurt. The store radio hummed about a weekend sale. My mouth tasted like metal. I typed, "No problem." That was all. Then I paid for nothing and walked out. I didn't drive home. I turned toward the river road and booked the first place that would take a late check-in. It was a narrow inn with creaky stairs and a neon fish sign that flickered like it was tired. In the room, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. I sat on the bed and put my phone face down. A small hook caught in my chest and pulled tight. Here is something simple I learned that night. When someone asks you to erase yourself, don't argue first. Create space so you can think. I opened our shared messages on the tablet I'd brought for work manuals. The thread with Lisette was right there. I scrolled back and took screenshots of the text she just sent and the ones before it where she asked me to stay out late. That was the communication proof. No guesses, just her words. The plant alarm app buzzed because a track switch 2 miles out had gone yellow. My hands moved on habit, logging the issue, telling the on-call crew. Even in shock, the job stays with you. At work, I spend my days reading signals and making sure each line points where it should. When the light blinks wrong, you don't speed up. You set the signal and slow everything down. I didn't sleep much. Around 2, I opened my bank app again. The pending charge had settled and another had joined it, a food delivery to our home address. That was the money proof. It wasn't the amount that cut, it was the address. I saved the alerts. I labeled the file tonight. Mini hook, because once you start saving instead of pleading, the story shifts. In the morning, I checked out before the sun cleared the trees. I drove to the rail yard, the sky gray and wide. The smell of creosote and cold iron wrapped around me like a coat. In the signal room, I pulled up the access panel for our house. We had installed a smart garage opener last winter so I could check if I forgot to close it. The log showed a code entry at 8:42 p.m. and another at 9:10. Those times matched her text and the food drop. That was the location proof, a small line of data that said someone came and went. I took pictures of the screen. I didn't rush back home. I went to see an older lawyer named Marable Knox who had an office above a closed bowling alley. The stairwell smelled like dust and oil and the light buzzed. Marable listened without changing her face. She had the kind of calm that makes your breathing match hers. She said, "File today. Keep it clean. Do not announce." She gave me practical advice number 2. If you plan to leave, leave before words make you stay. She slid a yellow pad across the desk and wrote a short list. I filled out the divorce petition in a quiet corner of the county building. The clerk stamped it with a dull thud. The paper felt heavier than it should. I didn't go back to the inn. I rented a small cabin outside town by a stand of birch. The place smelled like pine and wood smoke, and there was a kettle already on the stove. Before dusk, I went home once. Lisette's car was gone. I packed only what I needed: clothes, my field tools, the framed photo of my father by a track light. I changed the mailbox code and removed my card from our shared subscriptions. I left my wedding band on the table beside the papers Maribel had prepared. Then I closed the door and locked it. When she came home that evening, I wasn't there. The divorce papers were. She called. She texted. The phone lit up like a runway. I didn't answer. 2 days later, she found me at the yard gate. She stood in the cold with her coat pulled tight and her eyes already wet. That was our first confrontation. I asked her, "Who was the friend?" She said, "It was nothing, Oren. I just needed space." Her voice shook like a wire in wind. She denied the reason mattered. She said she only wanted quiet. I told her quiet doesn't need a locked house. She followed me to the signal room and kept talking. She said I overreacted. She said any couple needs breaks. That was our second confrontation. I pushed. I showed her the text on the tablet. She flipped it back on me. She said I invaded her privacy and that I was cold. She said I cared more about lights than people. I didn't raise my voice. I told her I had filed. Her hands went to her mouth. The next morning, I got an email from our building manager. He said someone had asked about the lobby camera because a guest claimed his coat was taken. He asked if I wanted a copy. Our place has a small hallway camera that records who comes and goes. It's posted. Anyone can request footage. I told him yes. The clip showed Lisette opening the door at 8:41 p.m. A man followed her in carrying a soft case. He had a hospital badge clipped to his collar. He hugged her before the door shut. That was the killer receipt. It didn't show anything private. It showed enough. The man was Arvo Klein. I knew the name because Lisette had said it before. He was a clinical education coordinator at North Shore Regional, the same hospital that sponsored her annual donor gala. The big twist hit me like a bell. The friend wasn't only personal. He was tied to the part of her job where appearances mattered most. I sent the footage to Maribel. She replied with one line, "Do not send to her, send to hospital compliance." Lisette came to the cabin that night. She knocked until my dog barked from the neighbor's place. I stepped out onto the porch so the cold could keep us steady. That was the third confrontation. She denied first. She said the video was out of context and he only dropped something off. Then she minimized. She said he sat for tea and they talked about work. She said I made a mountain from a porch. Then she partially admitted. She said he had been leaning on her and she liked the attention. She said nothing happened that counted. Then the emotional move came. She cried hard and fast. She said she was lonely and afraid of turning invisible. She said she needed me and that filing was cruel. I listened. When she paused, I said, "You told me not to come home." I said, "I believed you." I went inside and closed the door. The latch clicked like a small promise. Maribel guided the next steps. We sent the footage, the texts, and the bank alerts to the hospital's compliance office because Lisette's role put her in front of donors and staff. They replied with a formal notice. An admin board review was opened. They asked for statements from her and from Arvo. Arvo responded first. He sent a note saying he had been invited for privacy and that he regretted it. He asked that his name be removed from any event tie-ins. Then he stopped answering her. That was the moment he flipped. When consequences came, he stepped out of her shadow. The hospital moved quietly and fast. Lisette was placed on leave pending review. Her upcoming gala duties were reassigned. The whispers did the rest. This is the third piece of advice I'll give. When your peace costs someone else their image, you still choose peace. You are not required to hold up a lie. The mediation took place in a small county conference room with gray walls and a round table. A pot of stale coffee steamed in the corner. Maribel sat beside me and spoke only when needed. We agreed on simple terms. The house would be listed. Accounts would be split. The judge's clerk stamped the temporary orders and the sound echoed. The ending was not loud. It was paperwork and pens and nods. It was quiet. I moved fully into the cabin and then into a small apartment over a canoe shop. The smell of varnish drifted up at night. The river made a sound like pages turning. At work, I took a lead on a new line upgrade. I trained 2 apprentices how to read fault patterns and reset switches. I told them, before you move anything, set the signal and check again. I found myself repeating that line to my own thoughts. Set the signal. Let the light tell you what is safe. Months passed. The house sold. The dog went with her. The boots by the door were only mine now. Lisette tried once to reach me through a mutual billing contact, asking to talk. I didn't respond. I was done with midnight rooms and sudden rules. One winter morning, a woman named Sira came into the shop with a map case under her arm. She curated the small rail museum on the hill and needed help with a display signal that kept blinking wrong. We worked on it together, and she asked careful questions. She waited when I thought. She laughed when the light finally went steady. We started having coffee after shifts. She listened when I spoke. She didn't test or tease. She was present. In the spring, she cooked a simple dinner at her place. Steam rose from a pot and the windows were open to the pine air. We ate and watched the sky change. I didn't know what the final chapter would look like. The court date was still ahead. Some nights were still thin, but I knew this. When life tries to reroute you without warning, you pause, set the signal, and choose the line that keeps you whole. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.